The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle, where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships, or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
This is Nancy Rebecca, a great friend of mine who has also been a spiritual guide and just spiritual leader, not only in my life, but thousands of others. And I just want to welcome you on the podcast and just tell you how excited I am for you to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. It's great to be on this podcast.
We actually had the opportunity, I think it's been almost 3 years, 3 years ago, to meet. There was this guy throwing dumbbells, asking people to join a 6-week challenge.
Yeah, for women.
And this is, you ended up walking into my gym with your partner, Yvonne.
Yeah.
And I met you two, and we kind of hit it off right away. And let's just say, like, our energy and vibe, I was really attracted to it. And, you know, I loved having you guys in the gym, but that was kind of how it all started for us. And then I remember you offering me, hey, you should come in and do a reading. And I remember the first time I walked in, I'm thinking, oh man, I think I'm going to go to hell. I'm not sure if I should call my wife and tell her what's going on, or if I should wait. If I make it out of here, then I'll call her and tell her about the experience. And so I went for the second option, and I was really blown away. And the reason why I want to talk about this for a second, because I think a lot of times people have a misconception of what you actually do.
Yeah.
And when I walked in to your office, you know, I had this anxiety, kind of like this. I'm not kidding you when I say I felt like maybe I was going to go to hell, just because of the box that I had lived in. And what you did for me in that first session was, you know, I remember you asking me, hey, is there anything you're feeling? And I told you the way that you made me feel was like, hey, it was okay to feel that way. And then you also explained to me what we were really going to do, and just how you were going to read my energy. Just, you know, obviously, like, I am making this as simple as possible, but you were going to just talk to me about, you know, my chakras, my energy, my aura, and all these things. And I don't think people really know what that is, especially, like, I had no idea. And then when I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest thing ever. Yeah. Why did I wait so long? And then, so for the last 3 years, you've been a spiritual guide for me. And for many of the things that I've walked through and struggled with, you have helped me, you know, and guide me to where to find the answer, and also to just open up spiritually. And I would say it's helped me much more even than going to church and other things like that. It's probably helped me the most. So,
wow.
Yeah. So can you tell me and tell the listeners, like, exactly what it is you do? And explain it maybe a little bit better than I do, just to kind of just talk about what you do.
I am a registered nurse. I did work, about 16 years in intensive care. So sometimes people say, oh, you were a real nurse. And it's like, yes, I was a real nurse. I was very interested in the physiology of the body, you know, how the heart works, how the kidneys work, you know, how the adrenals work and the brain. And so I was quite fascinated, and I was fascinated by, you know, how is their health impacted? You know, where did that start? So I was always pretty curious in that way as a nurse. And then I was a hospice nurse for about 8 years after that, where I was a case manager, meaning that I had about 14 clients, families in various stages of decline. And then I would be there to kind of help them work through that process of letting go of the body. But I was still very physically focused. And then it was in the early, around 1994, I had 3 of my own family members that also were in the declining process. So you can imagine there was this kind of pressure cooker where during the day I was with those who were in the dying process. And then in the evening, I'd change clothes and then go to my family member's house. So I remember there was one day where it just was too much. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back emotionally. And I remember literally getting down on my knees and I was just sobbing. And I said, God, why do people have to die? Because in that time, my frame of reference was who we are as humans, our physical life.
Right.
And that was it. I didn't even know that I was a spirit. And 3 days later, I had purchased a book on meditation and I followed the first chapter. At the end of the first chapter, I went to bed and I had a spontaneous out-of-body experience. So if anybody wants to read more about that, my whole story's on my website. But the significant part, kind of getting to your reading, what happened when I came back to my body, then suddenly I could see colors around people and I could see chakras, although I didn't know what the word aura was. I didn't know what the word chakra was. And I could see this brightness around everyone. In addition to that, I could see the spirit world at the same time. I didn't know I was a spirit. And then I could hear people's thoughts. I could hear what they were thinking. So in my frame of reference and my medical training, for all sense of purposes, I would have been considered mentally ill or having some kind of mental breakdown. Fortunately, both my parents are doctors. And so I was able to go talk to them and they said, wow, we don't know what's happening to you, but let's see if we can find out some information. So that's really what started the journey. That has never changed. In 25 years, I can still see energy fields. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I'm made. But I've learned how to integrate it into the things that interest me, that I'm curious about. So I just kind of transferred my interest from the health of the body to the health of the energy field. Because I could see that people were many times doing the right things. They're eating right, they're drinking a lot of water, they're exercising, and yet they were self-sabotaging or all the good things that get, it's not doing any good. They weren't seeing results. So I could see that their energy field was out of balance. So one of the analogies that I use, it's kind of like if you have an aluminum can. So let's say the aluminum can is your energy field and the aluminum can is crushed and twisted. You're not going to be able to get the liquid of the soda in the can. It's just not going to fit in there. So if you think about if your energy field is twisted, distorted, maybe collapsed on one side, then your soul, your spirit cannot come all the way down into the body. The more your spirit comes into the body, the more you're able to function better. It's like your spirit helps you. Your soul helps to illuminate all aspects of your life, whether it's your marriage, your relationship, being a parent, working, doing things that are your passion. It's much more illuminated, much more in the flow when your spirit can work seamlessly with your human body. So really that's what I do. So when someone comes to my office, and so what you were describing is feeling that kind of nervousness and I don't know where that I'm going to hell. A lot of people think when they come to see me that I'm going to see all these negative things about them.
Right.
But it's exactly the opposite. Your spirit is so excited to share with you all that's right with you. So I actually have the best job in the world because I get to talk to your spirit, and then I get to translate that information, or kind of be the medium, if you want to say it that way. And
Right.
really is a person that can communicate with the spirit world and the physical world at the same time. So then they're just sharing, yeah, you're dynamic and you're awesome, but you've got this insecurity, or you second guess yourself, and it's causing the flow of your energy field to slow down. And so then I can help them to clear some of that insecurity or doubt. And then once, like in your session, you said you felt really great afterwards. What I'm doing is I'm scanning your field. I'm kind of going, I always say I'm kind of like a mechanic with a car engine. I'm just going through all aspects of it to make sure that it's running efficiently. That's basically what I've done for 25 years as I look at energy fields.
Yeah. So one of the fascinating things is, that we talk about is we have this physical body, and then we have this spirit or this soul. And sometimes, we know about the physical body, but we don't actually know what, soul or spirit is. And correct me if I'm wrong, if they're the same thing, but I think they're the same thing when you're talking about that. But kind of what I've learned is, we have this soul, and based off of our life work, we're chosen to have either like a male body or a female body.
Yeah.
Based off of kind of like our purpose or our calling in life and what we are called here to do. From that, we still have energy that's female energy and male energy.
Yeah.
And kind of the goal for us in alignment with our spirit and soul is to live in a place where we have that balance. And what I've really learned from you is you teach us in a sense, or that's kind of where you want us to get to, is where we have a balance of those two things.
Yeah. So we have many aspects of our energy field. So we have our aura, and our aura is, we have our spirit in our body, and the energy field kind of expands out from that. So many people will see it in photographs, kind of like this egg shape. And that's pretty much what it looks like.
Okay.
Then we have our chakras, and a chakra is a Hindu term. So it is an East Indian term, but you can hear words like energy center, which is, I think, more in the West of how we describe them. And each one of those, most people will talk about predominantly the seven main ones that help us, our spirit, kind of drive our human body.
Sure.
But we have actually hundreds, potentially thousands of them, depending on how extensive you want to go into this work. Then we do each, whether you're in a male body or a female body, you can have a woman that runs a higher level of male energy, and that can be very normal and very right for her body. And then you can have a man who runs a little bit more female energy, and that can be the way that his system was built.
Right.
That's the way working with more female energy is going to help him in his life. And then we have emotional energy channels. We have creative energy channels. We have our sexual energy channels. It is this huge system that we have. And so what I do is I teach people how to get all of those systems, just like a car engine. You want the pistons to be working. You want the spark plugs to be firing. You want, the fuel pump to be delivering enough fuel. So it's like I teach people how to manage their energy field, how to be aware of all the different aspects of their energy field, and heal their own energy field. Ultimately, I want them not to be dependent on me, but I want them to learn so much about their own energy field that they can maintain it, so they can be the most functional and optimize their best aspects in their life to accomplish the path or the mission or the purpose that they're here to do. And for each person, that's very different what they're here to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing. I think one of the first things, that you said after our first appointment was, I'm like, okay, when can I come in next? Like thinking next week. And it's like, no, you got to go and like process what we talked about. And, you know, you're not really allowed to come back for like 3 to 4 months, because this takes time to, you know, settle in. And I really want you to settle in. And I thought that was like, wow, that's really cool, knowing that, hey, someone has their best interest in me, because I know a lot of times, you know, in that specific case, it's like you could have just easily said, hey, you need to come back next week. I would have probably done it. And in that, then I start counting on you for the answers instead of kind of looking within to find them myself. And I thought that was really cool the first time that I came in. And I was like, wow, that's really neat that someone would actually do that. And then I always like to compare things to working out. So kind of what I'm getting from you is you can lift weights and you can do all these things right. But if, you know, you're not doing one thing, like maybe eating, it's not as effective as it is in these other, you know, energy sources. So you could have, you know, certain things working really well, but if one thing's off in this energy system, it could throw everything completely out of balance.
Completely out of balance. The aura is like your skin. So in nursing school, we're taught in medical school, or the Western medical model, we're taught that your skin is your first line of defense against harm and injury. And we're taught that if the patient or the person has a cut on their arm, then their defense has that protective layer of skin has been broken through. So now bacteria can get in there and then they can get sick. And now what I've learned is actually the skin is not the first line of defense for health. It's actually the energy field, the aura. So in your aura it looks like a membrane, almost like an amniotic sac around a baby in a womb. And you want it to be, you know, it's got its blood supply and its nourishment, it's healthy, it's resilient. It can expand and grow when the fetus expands and grows. When I'm looking at someone's aura, I can tell how healthy it is because it's like taking a latex balloon. It's like I can kind of pull on it a little bit. You want it to snap back. You want it to have that snap to it. But sometimes people are so depleted and so unhealthy that I go to pull on it and it just shreds like wet tissue paper. And so when someone's aura is like that, everything gets in, and they usually are very unhealthy. They get colds frequently. They can get some pretty major physical illnesses. So that's why, for me as a nurse, teaching about the importance of the healthy energy field, you can do all the right things for the body, but if you have a sick energy field, your body's going to take those hits over and over again. And so one of the first things I teach people, even if they come in so I can look at their field, it's like, wow, you need to start getting some sleep. You need to exercise, because exercise blows off this kind of built up of extra debris. And of course, adding meditation, but eating right, exercise, sleeping well, drinking fluids. But the energy field, you know, someone came in because we offer to the community once a month here in Tacoma, Washington, what's called Free Healing Friday. So we open, we have volunteers that I organize, and we're going on our 5th year of doing this for the low-income community. And they'll come in and they'll say, wow, I've never done anything like this before. I think this is really weird. And it's like, well, do you shower? You know, do you wash the dirt off your body? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, we're kind of like washing the dirt off your energy field. So it is just another level of knowing ourselves better. And that's why I love to teach people about the importance of a healthy energy field.
That's great. So one of the things I want to kind of point out to listeners is this, like, you may not believe in this stuff, but I will give you an example that you can actually read energy. If you've ever walked down a street and or in a crowded area or even in the mall, and maybe you've walked by someone and all of a sudden it was like, this like stream of energy of like, oh my gosh, like what was that? And maybe you look over and you notice this person that just walked by you, but it's like you felt maybe like this positive energy coming at you. And then there's been other times where, maybe, it's dark out or you're kind of in an unknown area. Somebody walks by you and you feel kind of this dark energy. That was always the best example I could give is like, well, we actually can read energy and feel it. A lot of times we're just not present enough to be aware of it. And I think the cool thing is, I think we have the ability to read our own energy if we are able to actually slow down enough, maybe put the phone down, social media, and begin to kind of tap into that energy source. But like, what are maybe some ways for people to begin just noticing kind of their own energy?
Well, those are great examples that you just gave. And we can tell, like if we're even standing and talking to someone and maybe they just moved in a little too close to us and we find ourselves kind of taking a step back and adding some distance.
Right.
What's happening there is that the two auras are kind of merging with each other, and that feels a little uncomfortable. You're trying to give yourself a little bit more space. Of course, I will always say meditation is the key to unlocking your sensitivities. But I will say that everyone that comes to my office has a high level of sensitivity, but they don't interpret it that way, just like you said.
Right.
Some people are feelers. So there's a word for that. It's called Clairsentience. It's a French word. And so when you're more of a feeler, and I heard you kind of using those kind of feeling words when you were walking through the mall, you can walk into a room and you can feel if someone is angry in that room, or you can feel if it's light and inviting and welcoming. Other people are more what's called clairaudient. So that means that they can hear sounds when they're around someone, because their soul has a color, it has a vibration, it has a frequency. And so some people hear that in the form of tones, or you may hear words, or sometimes you'll hear a song when you're standing next to someone and you think, oh, wow, I haven't thought about that song in a long time. And you don't even realize that you may have been picking up on the song in somebody else's energy field.
Right.
So, and then the other ability is clairvoyance, which is my dominant ability. So that means that I can see things, see energy fields with my eyes open. But I would say that most of us are clairvoyant, but we don't view it that way. So the example I give is if you close your eyes and I'll say, imagine your bedroom. Can you see where your bed is? They'll usually say yes. Can you see where your dresser is? Yes. Can you see where the chair, and it's like, but you're not actually in the room. No, but you can see it. Yes, you're using your clairvoyance to see it. But the difference is that I use my clairvoyance, so I just would turn to the Jesse energy field channel or whoever energy field I'm looking at. It's like I turn to that channel. Okay, I can see Jesse. Now let me see Jesse's aura. And then it's like the aura shows up when I close my eyes. Or I'll say, let me see Jesse's spiritual chakra. And then your spiritual chakra. So I just learned how to kind of navigate a little bit more that way. Once there's a story where I was in meditation and I asked my higher self, and I'll talk about the higher self here, or don't let me forget to talk.
Okay.
So I was asking my higher self, why is it that I only see illness in people? And it was explained to me because I'm a nurse. I'm trained to see illness. And I said, well, it gets kind of depressing to always see illness. Or if I'm just trying to have a conversation with a friend, I don't want to see their illness. And what Spirit said, well, just change the channel. And that's how I learned. It was like, oh, I just need to change the channel to their health and their resilience. And so that's how I started navigating that. And we can all do it. And then the other ability is called claircognizance. And most people are knowing. Most people just know that they're heading into something that's good and welcoming, or they just know that maybe they need to avoid something. And so knowingness is claircognizance. So everybody has at least one of those abilities. And you can go to my website at intuitivemind.org, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can put in your email and you'll be sent a 9-page kind of questionnaire. It's called Your Intuitive Style. So if anyone is curious who's listening, they can go there and just receive that, take the little questionnaire to see what their dominant intuitive style is.
Yeah, and if you guys are listening to this, you can go into the show notes of Habit-Based Lifestyle, and I'll actually put the website in there, and you'll be able to go to that and find that out. And if you have any questions, Nancy is a huge resource, not only in Tacoma, but just all around the world. I think the cool thing is you worked with me for a long time where I would come into your office, and then one day I'm down here and I was kind of like, hey, I'm kind of struggling. Can you read my energy? And you're like, yeah, I can do it. And so here I am, like waiting, to talk to you on the phone or on Zoom. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, are you going to send me the Zoom link or call me? And you said, well, I actually have already read your energy and I can do it from, thousands of miles away. And I was like, what the heck? And so I thought that was really cool, because I sat there for a minute and I had no idea that was even possible. But after you sent me the tape, in the audio thing, I was like, holy cow, like she really can read from far away. And I was super fascinated with that. But I don't know if you can really explain how you do that, but like in a simple way. But how could you do that? And can you only do that with people you've worked with before, not someone you would work with for the first time?
Can I share a little story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had met this physician that worked in Virginia. I had met her on a trip when I was working with the healers in Australia. So we were on this trip together. So as we were talking, and I was talking about my abilities as a clairvoyant and a healer, she said, well, I've got this really tough case. I have a woman that has very severe psoriasis. And so she asked me if I could work with her patient. She said, I've taken her as far as I can go with her healing. I'd never met the woman, knew nothing about the woman, never talked to the woman. And I said, so this was in 1998. So it was quite a while ago. So I said, sure, let me practice. And all I did was just, I had the woman's name and just thought about her. And it was as if she was right there in the room with me. And as a nurse, I was just like, how is that possible? And so, yeah, I had doubts come up and second guessing, but I thought, well, let me just go with it. I'll just go with it, because I thought this must just be my imagination. It cannot possibly work. But I thought, well, I've got this physician that's open. I've got this patient that's open. So let's go for it. So I did a reading, and I was able to identify some stuck areas in her energy field. And I was able to help clear those. And the next day, I'd sent the recording. The next day, I got a call from the physician on my message machine. She was like, I need to talk to you right away. This is wild. So I called her, and the client had come in, and overnight, her psoriasis had disappeared by 50%.
Wow.
And so then right away, the client was super excited, said, can you do this again? So I waited a couple of weeks. I didn't wait the normal 3 months, because she had lived with this her whole life, the psoriasis. Right. But after 3 sessions, we're able to get it cleared 100%. And wow. She, at this point, was 50 years old. So she had lived with it for 50 years. So I knew I had tangible results with a valid medical doctor that could verify with her eyesight the results. And so that has really helped me since then when I'm working with others at a distance, that I can really trust that what I'm seeing is true. what I'm sensing, what I'm picking up is true, and that the healing will have valid results.
That's amazing.
So how does it work? In the spirit world, there's a saying with people who do a lot of spiritual work. In the spiritual world, there's no such thing as time or space. And in the human world, we work off of dichotomy, hot and cold, good and bad.
We're obsessed with time.
Yes, we're obsessed with time. But in the spirit world, there's no time or space. And we'll hear that often when our loved ones die and cross over, that when it's our time to die, it will be as if it just happened a minute. Even though our parent may have died 30 years before us, we hear once we cross over, to them, it's like it's only been a minute. So there's no time or space. So yes, it doesn't matter. I don't need to know anybody. You can even tell me your friend. You don't even have to tell me their name. You could, and then I can just start seeing their energy field and see what's going on. I have cultivated this. I had the skill and ability. I didn't have the confidence or the, I had doubts and second guessing, that human thing that we do with just about everything, that could block me from accessing all my skill. And so that's really what I do when I read people. It's like, what's blocking you from accessing all the skill and ability that you have? And it just me and my own journey of opening myself up to my skill has helped me to see how far I've been able to go. So I get super excited when I work with others to see how far they can go as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That really blew me away when you were able to do that. But can you talk about the chakras and I know you said that they come from this word, but what do they actually mean, and what do they maybe between that and the aura, what does all this stuff actually mean if we were to break it down into really simple terms?
All right, I'll try. And so you ask me questions if it's not simple. So let me just talk about us as spirit and the spirit world. So we're a spirit, and we've decided we want to come down to earth in a human body. And especially right now in 2019, as spirit, we want to be down here on earth during this great time of change. So a lot of people are really struggling right now, and it's like, wow, this is hell on earth. But in actuality, as spirit, we all wanted to be here during this great time of change. When we decide that we want to take on a body, which is, you talked about that, do I want it to be male, female, where do I want to live? What parents do I want to come through to? So once we come through, we bring our aura and our chakras with us from the spirit world. And some people believe that we bring that through past lives, that we've lived lives before. And there's a lot of information and research studies now that really show the validity of living lives before. It took me a long time to kind of wrap my head around that. So what I say is just kind of like this, it's a metaphor for stories or this universal consciousness. Maybe we're tapping into the history of everyone who's lived before, and we're learning from their stories. But anyway, so we have these chakras, and the chakras are like spiritual libraries filled with information. So like the root chakra, for example, that's located between the hips. It has all the spiritual information. I say it's like a library. And when we meditate, we open up those doors to the library, and then we'll pull the books that we need at the time. So you might have out there the book on how to be a father to children, how to take care of my physical body, how to have abundance and money and all the things that I need to feel safe and comfortable in life, how to engage with community, how our physical health or threats of life and death. So all that information is in that root chakra, is stored there. So our spirit kind of taps into our own inner source of knowledge and information to help guide us and help us to make decisions moving forward. So then just each chakra is the same. The second one's more about our emotions, because emotions are a body thing. It's not a spiritual thing.
Right.
And so our spirit needs to learn needs to know and help guide us emotionally. Our third chakra, that's between the navel and diaphragm, is about our self-esteem, our power, how to recognize boundaries. Like boundaries is a huge thing for people. And when that chakra gets really strong, you've got stronger boundaries in life with the energy fields around you. And then our heart, we all know the heart is all about love. And our spirit really helps teach us through gathering information. So if we've been hurt in the past, maybe we don't trust, maybe we didn't have parents that were very stable or healthy themselves. Maybe we were in a relationship where they betrayed us and had an affair with somebody else. It can cause the chakra to become damaged, so it makes it harder for your own spirit to access it. But your spirit's always moving in the direction to getting it back to a state of health again. And so the throat chakra is all about communication, and this is about clear seeing, intuition, and then your spiritual chakras at the top. So they're all libraries filled with information based on your experiences in life. Like I had a woman yesterday or a couple days ago that came in. She's been to therapists, she's been to doctors, she's been to healers, and finally she got my name and she came in and she said, I feel off. How can anybody do anything about someone saying, I feel off?
Right.
And she's an equine therapist, so she works with horses. But right away, as soon as I saw her field, I said, I see the problem. So she had gone to all these other people. And I said, what happened to you around your birth when you were born? I saw a huge tear in her between her 6th and 7th chakra. So when you're in the womb, and then you're born, and when you take your first breath as an infant, your spirit drops into your body. Well, I could see that this was torn. Something happened. So when she went to take that first breath, her spirit couldn't come all the way into her body. Why not? So she revealed to me that her mother had had several miscarriages. So you can imagine now her mother's carrying her in the womb, but her mother's terrified that she's going to miscarry again.
Wow.
That terror, that fear imprinted on her when she was an infant. So what I was able to do, Jesse, was repair the tear. And then more of her spirit dropped into her body. And then she thought a miracle happened because she didn't feel off anymore. But for me, on my side of the fence, when I'm doing the work, it's quite a simple fix.
Wow, that's amazing. I think, one of the cool things is that you can see that right away. The other thing is like, can you actually, if you walk around in public,
yes,
can you actually see all of this stuff, or do you have to sit there for a second and really tune into it? Because I would think if you could go around seeing all this stuff right away, you'd be like, oh my gosh, don't do this, maybe you want to change this. And, I think, I'm not really sure how that would, it seems like energetically you'd be putting out a lot of your own energy all day long. What do you actually do after you answer that part? What do you actually do to kind of, focus on your own energy?
Yes, I can see everyone's energy all the time. I can see their chakras all the time. And I can see, if it's out of balance, or if maybe their aura is not coming over the top of their head, which can cause someone to have chronic headaches. Easy fix, where you then get the aura to come back up over the head. And so, yes, I can see that. And I've had to, so I just don't respond to it.
Sure.
I just trust that their spirit's going to guide them in a way. I really trust that, Jesse, 100%, that their spirit's going to get them to a place of health and wholeness and harmony again, in whatever variety of ways that it's going to be. So yes, in the beginning, it was what I call very overstimulating. But people will often ask me that question. I'll say, well, if you walk into a room and you notice this woman has this beautiful red dress on, and then this other man has these nice jeans, and it's like, oh my gosh, those great shoes, and oh, I love your haircut. You're getting information from people in this crowded room some people can't tolerate being in a room of 1,000 people, and some people just really thrive being around 1,000 people. So
Right.
I have learned over the years to me, it's just like, oh, they have a red aura. Oh, that's a nice red dress. So to me, I've normalized it. But in the beginning, my learning curve was very high and very steep. I do meditate every morning to strengthen and help my own energy field be quite resilient and centered. And so once I do that every morning, and I've learned through trial and error, if I miss meditating, I'm going to kind of be at the whim of the ebb and flow of chaos and crisis of energy all day long. So I've learned over time to start my day with meditation. And then at night, I've been around energy fields, picking up stuff. I'm working with people all day long energetically. And then I make sure that I do a meditation in the evening to clear any residual that I may have. So I have gotten better at it, but in the beginning, I call it an energy hangover.
Yeah.
I had that energy hangover and it didn't feel very good. And it was like, who in their right mind would choose this as a career? But I have gotten better at maintaining a healthy balance in my life. Yeah.
That's great. And I kind of think of, how I first met you as a trainer, and I could tap into that in that environment with clients.
And the physical body.
Yes. And then now that I'm doing coaching and a lot of it's virtual, I've had to tap in energetically more to people because there's not the physical contact. There's not you're not physically like standing in front of me, although we are on a screen.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've learned how to tap into that energy and kind of like you said, come up with, hey, like a lot of times where I will feel a lot of people's energy is in the past. Yeah. And just understanding sometimes we haven't dealt with a lot of things in the past. And so going back to kind of the root cause has been, very impactful. And I feel like that is kind of my specialty in seeing that, or, I don't know if it's seeing it or being aware of it. And I know you kind of talked about the feeling. I think I feel that. Maybe I don't see it, but I think I'm more of a feeler, that I can feel that. And so really being able to tap into that, but I don't think I was ever aware of it until I came in and started working with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have that capacity and we all have that ability. And it's interesting because, I am getting more physicians that are coming in and training with me. And so they want to enhance their intuition when they're working with their patients because, sometimes the patients can be quite vague or, when you don't feel good, you just don't feel good. Sometimes you don't know why you don't feel good. And so I am seeing more physicians that are coming in for training. They're not out loud and proud about it, as far as coming totally out of the closet, but it does show me that this is a new level of tools and techniques that you can use in your kind of arsenal of things that you can bring to help others. And yes, when you tune into someone, even though they're not fit, you didn't know you could do that till you tried it.
Yeah.
Once you tried it, it's like, wow, I'm getting a lot of information here. I'm surprised. And then the next time you open up to it a bit more, and then it's just seamless. You just don't even think about it anymore. You're just able to tap in. When I was in China, what was quite shocking for me was here in the Western world, I think I spend most of my time trying to convince people or explain how valid and valuable this information is in applying to their life. But that I went to China and they didn't, when I said, I'm an intuitive and I'm a clairvoyant, they didn't say, oh, that's crazy. They said, oh, well, then we're going to test you. So they would give me an example of a person that might be on the other side of the country or, okay, tap into my uncle, tell me about my uncle. Okay, tap into my child, tell me about my child. And it wasn't that they were trying to test me to see if I knew what I was doing. They were curious of what my style was. What's my style of reading? So you have other countries, I've been to Nepal and India and South Africa. You go to other countries where this is very normal and people use it every day. But here in the Western world, we're just now softening to it a bit. So I really appreciate you being willing and open and vulnerable to share this level of work that you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you. I think here in the Western world, if we were tapped into ourselves as much as we are tapped into our cell phones, we would be far surpassed everybody else.
Yeah, I think that you're right about that. We're, here in America and the United States, we are tough, but what in our questioning or doubting, but what I love about it is it challenges us to explore. It challenges us to think about how is this working? How does that work? And it challenges us to find a language for it that is not another country's language, like chakras.
Right.
So there's a lot of science that is starting to do more research on this. So it's an exciting time. I've waited a long time, the world to open up a bit more, and I'm really excited that I actually get to see it in my lifetime. Yeah,
and you've kind of what I'm hearing you say is you're, years ahead of where a lot of other people were. Mm-hmm. And so, you had to kind of take that criticism along the way where people are like, hey, maybe, she's a little bit out there. Maybe she's having a midlife crisis, but for the last, 20 years. And then now all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, maybe she's not that crazy. Maybe she does know what she's talking about. And maybe I just need to go see her and find out for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool that you had the resiliency to actually stick with something when maybe you were the only one that actually believed in what you were doing.
Yeah.
And the other thing with that is I have a couple questions that I want to ask you that are a little bit different. So like, you've traveled the world into, Africa. You've mentioned a few other places, Nepal. But where has been the place that has been the most impactful for you that you've traveled to, and why?
Well, definitely South Africa.
Okay.
Would be the most impactful for me. I lived there for a year, and I lived there amongst the Zulus, and I actually lived in a Zulu hut. Yvonne and I did. The Zulu hut had no electricity, no running water, just being very connected to the earth there, very grounded to the earth and surrounded by nature. What it did was, our bodies love nature, and our bodies love feeling grounded and connected to the earth. And what that did was it just really relaxed my body, helped my body expand more, allowed more of my spirit to come down into my body. Our spirits are quite large, and on average, only about 20% of our spirit can fit in our body. The other 80% is outside of our body. So that's when I refer to higher self. That's that higher part of us that's not limited by the body. But the other thing is that the Zulus and the Africans in general, they believe that our ancestors, our family members that really struggled to survive, went through their own struggles, their own successes, that they are there loving and supporting us, and that we are impacted by the experiences that they've had. It took me a long time to wrap my mind around that one. And I feel like I'm still, at baby steps. But that country was the most impactful. It's very spiritually rich. To me, I view their traditions almost pretty seamless over thousands of years, the oral traditions. It hasn't been broken by westernization or let's say modernization in the world. Yet that is changing, because I was telling someone when I lived there in 2004, there were still Zulus who walked around bare-chested. They only start wearing tops when they get married, and now you never see that. They dress very much like the Western world does. But I've learned a lot about, they have this saying, you only have problems in life because you've taken your eyes off God. So they say that in Zulu. So when I ask them to interpret it, that's how the interpretation comes. You've taken your eyes off spirit. You've put your eyes on your problems, and that the problems grow. So you need to, they told me, take your chin and push it up. And sometimes I literally do that when I'm really over-focused on something that's bugging me in life. I'll literally say, Nancy, and I'll take my jaw and I force myself to look up and remember to stay focused on my spiritual perspective. But I just have one other little story to share about that. So we were talking to the Zulus about what I was doing there and what I did and how I saw the world through an interpreter. And this one young man, he was only 19 years old. So he says and asks in Zulu, and the interpreter then says, he wants to know if you believe that all illness is created by stuck memories.
Wow.
Yeah, that was what I said. Wow. And I said to him, how did he know that? And the interpreter said, well, that's their way of life. That's how they're raised from a very young age, that if you hang on to the past, you hang on to betrayals, you hang on to memories and allow them to remain stuck in your energy field, those are the places where disease grows. And that's the work I do. I help identify where there's some stuck energy, where maybe you haven't let go of the past, or maybe there were traumas, help you to release those so that you can get healthy again or illness won't settle in. And they see energy fields. So they're always laughing. We take a group of people over every 2 years. As a matter of fact, we're taking a group this November. And if anybody wants to come, we still have about 8 spots left. They'll talk about when we show up as a group, they see us as just this foggy, heavy, dense energy. And then they say on the last day when we're about ready to leave, we're just really bright and shiny.
Wow.
It's been very impactful about how they just normalized these abilities. They're not special. I'm not gifted. I'm not special. I'm normal. Everyone can open up to their abilities and normalize them.
Obviously, the name of the podcast is Habit-Based Lifestyle. So what would be one habit that you would have somebody maybe start doing to begin just to tap into this?
And that is an easy answer for me. And that answer is grounding. Our energy field, so our spirit's quite light. We are quite dynamic here in the West and smart and intelligent and scientifically minded. And so our auras can almost look like a light bulb, where it's a little narrower at the bottom and then it balloons out around the head at the top. So whenever I see that in auras, I can tell someone's definitely overthinking. Thinking too much, call it, hyper-analysis over everything. And so what happens is their aura actually pulls up and people, they'll feel anxiety, nervous. They feel like they're crawling in their own skin, jumping out of their own skin. So the very first thing, anybody, even if they have depression and they're low, there's a low, dense, sticky energy in the field. When you're feeling depressed, I just want to add this piece. When you lean more towards chronic depression, most of your energy is in the past. If you tend to have more anxiety, most of your energy is in the future, worrying about the future. So that's why it's always important to remind yourself to be in the present and what today's date is. So in grounding, you can imagine just closing your eyes, imagining that you're a tree with a strong trunk and a deep root system that goes all the way to the core of the earth. So once someone does that, I always say a 200-mile hurricane force wind could come by and you're just solid. You're not going anywhere. You're not an easy pushover. And so it just helps solidify your whole energy field, and more of your spirit then can come into your body. But the other thing about grounding is it also functions like a drain. So I'll explain to my clients that if the streets drain gets overflooded, full with leaves in the fall, it blocks the drainage system in the streets, and the streets can flood with water. Our grounding is the same. If our grounding gets stuck or clogged or plugged, then if we have overwhelming emotions, overwhelming fear, anxiety, we can't release it anywhere. It just sits there in our aura. So the number one thing that I would have people start doing is grounding and releasing. And I have those recorded meditations in MP3 form on the product, under the product button on our website that they can download to just begin learning how to ground. And for me, that's the very first thing that I want people to learn. And then I see how they respond to just grounding every day. And then we then move to the next level of teaching.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. So one last thing.
Okay.
What's something you're working on, like, for the future?
Well, thanks. These are great questions. So about in the past 3 years, I've worked extensively on developing a nonprofit organization. So I don't know if that's the direction you're going, but that's where my focus has been. This nonprofit is called Soul Seed. So after I get off the call with you, I will go back to working on the website. But my dream has been to, what I have found in working with people for 25 years now who have chronic trauma in their field. Many times, if you had alcoholic parents or abusive situations, they'll carry that childhood trauma into adulthood. And then as an adult, you can function so far, but then you get blocked. And that's usually when people come to see me, is when they can only get so far and they can't go further. So I help people clear a lot of chronic trauma. But I'm really wanting to work kind of boots on the ground, getting in some of the marginalized communities, getting into some of the poverty areas, or even working with staff like in Child Protective Services, getting it into prisons, mental health hospitals. Just have applied for a grant for those who have been injured or harmed by domestic violence or sexual abuse. So I know that these tools can help, because they perpetuate that trauma and they can't seem to get out of the poverty cycle. They can't.
Right.
That's where I want to take this work next. So I've been super excited about getting that launched here in the next month.
Yeah, that's really cool. The reason I asked, I knew what you were doing, but I wanted you to actually talk about it. The more we know about it, the more we can support you in that also.
Thank you.
Just like you've been able to support me, and I want people in my network to be a part of that for you, just because the value you've brought into my life, my family's, and also what I've been doing now. So thank you for
Jason.
that. Yeah. So one last thing. So yesterday I actually had a meditation teacher come in and teach meditation for an hour and a half. We did a podcast. I kind of asked him the same thing about the habit, and he was talking about being present. I said, hey, you know what? One of the spiritual teachers taught me that I've used is, she taught me that when I feel anxiety, or when I feel, maybe these depression or these thoughts from the past of not good enough and things like that, I think this was like the first or second session I had with you. You said, just remind yourself like how old you are.
Yeah.
Remind yourself of the date and the time and the year, and just bring yourself back. That'll help you bring yourself back to the present place. And that has stuck with me for, I think, about 2.5 years when you first taught me that. But I shared that with him, and he's like, wow, that's really cool. But you said it really quick, but I want to also make that an example for people. Is, that was one of the most powerful things, yet simple things that you taught me. And I think it took me a year just to figure out what the heck that meant. And then when I finally did, I'm like, okay, now I know what she means. That's my grounding.
Yeah.
And I can come back to the present place, and none of that stuff really exists in the present moment.
Yeah. So if I can so what happens, I actually just had a client this week that happened with. And it was that man that came in, and I go to look at his energy field. He's telling me about the issues and the problems that are going on. And I could see right away what the issue was. He was at the age of 3 years old. And how it looks to me is I'm looking at him, but his aura is only coming up to the diaphragm area. And it's like his little light was in just the lower part of his body. I could just see this little boy light. there in the lower part of his body. So all I did was I said, how old are you really, like right now? And he told me, I think his age was 54. And then I stated that today's date, and I said, so you're not 3 years old, you're 54 years old. And just as I'm talking to you, Jesse, just that quick, it was just like, boom, his aura just expanded again back to age 54. He shifted, he felt so much better. And I'm like, okay, our session's done. We fixed the issue, and we had a good laugh about that. But it is kind of mind blowing, isn't it? Where, even for him, it was his first time ever seeing me. And he's just like, how did you do that so quick? And it's like, well, for some reason, something happened emotionally that triggered him into that 3-year-old age. So that's what we made our session about. Let's go back and what was happening in your life when you were 3 years old? What was happening between your parents when you were 3? And I think that's when his parents got divorced.
Sure.
Something was coming up at work. I think that they were selling the company to another company, so it triggered some of that kind of abandonment, loss stuff. And so it was just like, we don't realize how our early development experiences can get triggered and we can respond in our adult life. And so if he went around walking around like that, he would be responding like an emotional 3-year-old. He would get embarrassed and uncomfortable, but he could, sometimes you just can't shift out of it. So absolutely, Jesse, I do at least once a day, I remind myself how old I am, especially if I feel like I get triggered.
Yeah, I would say this is the one thing that I use on clients a lot. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, how old am I? And I would go through it and they're like, oh my gosh, like now I actually see myself as this, 8-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid or 12-year-old kid. And then I tell them the story. Hey, don't worry. Like I learned this, from you because I was doing the same thing. And oftentimes I still find myself doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we all do. Well, we get triggered. And when we get triggered, our energy field does not realize that we're not 3.
Right.
Because the 3-year-old memories come up. And so it just shifts back to that 3-year-old memory, and you're at that vibration and frequency of that 3-year-old memory. But yet you're trying to be a CEO of a company and make some major decisions, and you're freaking out because you're like, I am feeling way off, and I need to be in my power right now. So it can be something quite minor. That is a really easy fix, an easy shift.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for being on here today. It's been amazing. Like I could probably sit on here for the rest of the day, but I know you got to get back to what you're doing. And I just want to thank you for being on here, sharing this space with me, but also everything you've done for me and my family.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. And thank you for what you've helped me to do for a woman that had never I had 2 left feet, never very sports oriented growing up, that you taught me that I could be physically strong again. So a mutual adoration club going on here.
Okay. So one last thing, how did people get in contact with you?
Just go to my website, www.intuitivemind.org. Sometimes I'll laugh and say it might take you 3 days to read through it because my website is meant to be educational. So you can kind of read through it, take a break, come back and visit it. But they can go right to our calendar to see calendar of events if they want to make a long distance or in-person appointment with me. I do have people who fly in for them because they just cannot imagine that I can do it at a distance. But there's a big red button that just says schedule, make an appointment. But yeah, that's the best way to get through. And we're always upgrading our calendar.
Awesome. So if you are on here listening to this and you are considering getting a long distance reading, I would tell you to do it. Just push the button. Go on the website and do it. It'll change your life and it'll change the trajectory of where you're at, and you won't regret it. So if you are looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in the Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group. This is where I'll be dropping daily habits to live to your full potential. Maybe you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle. Feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, Jesse@habitbasedlifestyle.com. Until next episode, have a great day.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse